Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. Today we'll be creating this split cake filled with buttercream flowers. You'll need a 7-inch cake. Anything 7-inch and above would work well. Anything smaller kind of becomes really unstable because it's so tall and thin and it just risks it toppling over. Cut 4 layers in half and then stick a cake board that has been cut to a same size as the cake onto a temporary board. So you'll have 2 of these, one for each cake. And this will just make it easier to pick them up and transport them onto a display board. I've got buttercream that I'm using here. This is my hybrid buttercream frosting and I'll have the recipe linked in the description box and in the eye icon of this video. I've used a floral Russian piping tip, just a ball tip at the end of my piping bag, and then sticking my baking paper to a tray or something flat with a little bit of buttercream. Create a little dollop in the middle and then twist it left to right. Stop squeezing completely and then pull up. Continue this all the way around until you have at least a good 10 to 15 roses. For the little centers, I've taken my Maltesers, I've added edible gold luster dust into a Ziploc bag, give it a little bit of a toss to coat and then apply them into the center of your flowers. Into the freezer she goes for a good couple of hours. I recommend at least 3 hours. And then assemble your cakes. I've just used buttercream to stick it to that cake board underneath. And then filling in as you normally would. Try to make sure that you've cut all the layers the same size and you're also keeping an eye on how well they're stacking up, making sure they're straight. Because it's a really odd shape and it is super tall, I've added in 2 bubble tea straws and I've cut them flush with the very top of the cake. This will just ensure that it remains stable, the cake layers don't shift around as I'm working with them, and also to help them not topple over. Apply buttercream all around the cake on the flat end and also on the rounded side. And this will be just the crumb coat, so we're treating this like a regular cake. We want to trap in all the crumbs, then smooth it out with a frosting scraper. And if you'd like to grab a frosting scraper like this one, I will have the item listed in the description box for you guys as well. I want it to be a little bit thicker than usual, the crumb coat, so I just kept adding and smoothing. And then bringing that lip of frosting towards the middle. Pop it into the fridge to set for a good 40 minutes if you can, or in the freezer for 20 minutes, and work on your second cake. I've chosen a caramel mud and a regular chocolate mud. These are just cakes that I bought from the supermarket. So really easy if you guys want to do this at home and you want to save on time, you can just buy the pre-made cakes. Into the fridge she goes as well, and then once it's nice and set, apply that final layer of frosting. I've just kept it white. You can tint it with gel food color if you like. I always like to start at the top and then work my way down to the base. I've left that flat side because it's going to be completely covered with roses. I really couldn't justify using any extra buttercream that I needed to. Smooth out the sides and the very top as well, adding any buttercream here and there as you need it, just to fill in any spaces if you see any. Technically, you could also remove the lip that we've created on the sides and the top, but I'm just going to leave them protruding off the cake, and I'm just going to remove that very top edge to make it all flat like a regular cake. We're going to paint in those lips afterwards, so you can add it as an extra feature. You can pop it into the fridge to set again, just that top layer that we created. Let it set for a good 20 minutes, half an hour. And then apply your flowers. These are now coming out of the freezer after a few hours. They can handle them with your hands and they won't mess up. Apply a bit of buttercream at the back. Arrange them like a 5-sided die. So you have a square and then one in the middle. And then to fill in the spaces, I've taken a number 1M piping tip and a slightly different colored pink buttercream. Where there are the large spaces, I'll create the rosettes. And then in those smaller sections, just little star dollops. I am keeping some teeny tiny sections open so that we can create little floral buds with a round piping tip. Let it set in the fridge for 20 minutes and then work on your second cake. And again, I've chosen a 7-inch at least so that it's nice and stable. I was actually really worried throughout the whole process that it will topple over, but it was actually a really good size. For even more stable cake structure, I'd recommend going for an 8-inch, so that's just a little bit bigger. Take a number 352 piping tip with some green buttercream and create little petals all around your flowers and your rosettes. Any spaces in between now, we're going to take a number 10 circle piping tip, or just a small to medium size round piping tip, and filling in little dollops wherever you see spaces, or if there's something you like to cover, this will be a great time to do it. I let it build and then I do a teeny tiny little circular motion just to make sure that it doesn't end up with a peak at the very top. Take a smaller round piping tip again, stick it a couple of millimeters into your dollop and then squeeze out the frosting to make it look like a bud. You could add extra leaves around these if you like, or you could just leave it as is. Basically, we're using that to cover all the spaces where you can see between the flowers into the cake. Pop it into the freezer now for a good 20 minutes and then release it from the temporary cake board and stick it to the display board. I've chosen a rectangle board for the display board just to make it a little bit easier to rearrange and move the cakes around. Because it's been in the freezer for 20 minutes, I can handle it with my hands as I reapply it to a different board, and it won't dent the frosting. Once you're happy with the position, take some vodka or rosewater spirit or some lemon juice or white vinegar if you can't use alcohol. Mix it with a gold luster dust to create a paint, and then paint around that lip across the sides and the top. If you like, you can create a pearl border with buttercream right at the base just to hide the seam and the cake board if you can still see it through the frosting. And that's it. That is how you create a fun split cake filled with buttercream flowers. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and give it a go. If you do, hashtag Rosie's Dessert Spot so I can see your awesome creations as well. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.